Okay, be me at 15 years old in the summer of 2014. I just finished my freshman year of high school. I'm still pretty young and I haven't really started growing yet. I still play DS, and just last summer I got into this Ace Attorney series. I'd played Professor Layton games starting in elementary school and played them sequentially as they came out. I was obsessed with them. I emulated Ace Attorney 1 the winter before and fell head over heels in love with it. It shared the same reliance on puzzles and problem solving with a strong focus on narrative and personality. The main characters both had sidekicks, which complemented them perfectly, and they even point their fingers when they solve something important. And then, a crossover between games. I was overwhelmed. It made so much sense. The game released in Japan and nowhere else. I waited 2 years for the Western release in the summer of 2014. The summer I biked alone for a few miles in the rain to a Walmart near my house where I'd pre-ordered it. My parents didn't want me to play DS so much, so my trip in secret in the rain against their will felt very coming of age to me. I tore into the game and adored it all the way through. I got to do cases and solve puzzles. Professor Layton objects. Phoenix and Maya have puzzle-solving animations, and the setting fits both series so well. How do you do a nice twist on a set of murders and give Professor Layton an interesting location and mystery to explore? Transport everyone to a town in a storybook where the trials are for witchcraft. It made sense. I played it, I loved it, and I forgot about it. But I remembered it being incredibly beloved to me and to fans of either and especially both series, so I looked up its reception recently. It's muddy and weird. Some people swear it's a perfect crossover, others say it's mid and not really the best that either series has to offer, and still others claim it's a bad addition and the worst version of both series by a pretty wide margin with a really unsalvageable ending. And the weird thing is that all of those things are kind of true. This game defies characterization because it's incoherently loyal to both series. It's incoherently enamored with both of them. This game was made by someone who loves these games to death, for people who love them to death. It's genuinely a lot of fun, and I'm really grateful that it exists. I'm going to be really honest with my discussion of this game because the bar is so high, and because a game that is so earnestly itself and is so overflowing with admiration for its source material does deserve to be treated fairly. And along the thread of deep admiration and love for Professor Layton and Ace Attorney, I have a really special video planned as a crossover between my channel, which is centered around a lot of Ace Attorney stuff, and a channel with a lot of love and videos about the Professor Layton series. Things no one cares about. I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about this case in broad strokes to give a general impression and get everyone up to speed, and the back half of this video will be a collaborative Q&A about this game. So after this video, or now if you feel inclined, please go check out Things No One Cares About and subscribe and go leave a comment or two. If there's interest, I'm thinking about doing my normal format of like a longer video per case or chapter and spending more time and attention opening up the sprites, posing, soundtrack, writing, animation, puzzles, and the normal wheelhouse. But since this video is already really long, this is going to be a comprehensive and condensed discussion of the game. Let me know if you guys are more or less interested in this compared to the original trilogy and great Ace Attorney videos, which I'm working on. Also, super important, Things No One Cares About is posting the sister video to this one tonight, so they're both going to go up. Hers is really good. I'm really excited that both of them are going up. So once you're done with this one, make sure to check that one out. All right. Okay, strap in and get ready to talk about a passion project about a passion project. Professor Layton versus Ace Attorney. Without further ado...
Welcome! Our bakery uses only the finest ingredients. Upper crust goods for not much dough.
Talented and highly enthusiastic, it seems.
He's kneading the dough pretty hard, isn't he?
We start in the Layton section with a pretty dynamic opening. There's an Italian detective driving a hooded girl in an escape from flying robed figures. Nearby statues come to life and flip their car into a tree as the hooded girl escapes. What follows is a cute little cutscene with Herschel and Luke talking and Phoenix and Maya on a plane to an overseas legal exchange, which, and I'm not exaggerating, is some of the best interaction between them. I love these voice actors a lot, actually, and seeing this scene made me so excited to watch them interact together. Maya's theme is so good, and they're flexing really hard with this arrangement.
Aw, well that's no fun.
The intro card and theme play as another huge flex, and this introduction sequence is really promising. The intrigue is great, the animation is good, the arrangements are great, the mystery is really fun. The hooded girl appears at Layton's office door, handing him a letter from an old acquaintance, Carmine Accidente.
Carmine Accidenti.
I like his voice.
Dear Professor, it has been a long time.
The style, the letter written by someone who needs help and needs to deliver the inciting premise and hook, is very on brand for Layton. It all started in a town called Labyrinthia. The girl with the letter is named Espella Cantabella, and it is her being pursued. Witches, Espella reveals, are chasing her. She also shows the storybook of Labyrinthia, a book of everything that has happened and will happen in her home of Labyrinthia. And on cue, a witch appears, abducting Espella and fleeing. The professor and Luke pursue her through London, and for the record, Layton's version of London at night is really, really pretty. This might be my favorite version of London they've done, actually. We meet Chelmy and Barton because hijinks and investigate the scene of the car accident. Luke busts his ass and we find Espella and do some Scooby-Doo shenanigans where Luke puts on the robe and Espella jumps away on board a passing cargo ship. And with that, Luke and Layton are transported into the storybook. This chapter is good, there's good intrigue, the premise is so far inoffensive, and the choice of how to spend time, where, and to set up what is open by design. On replays, it becomes more frustrating because lots of things aren't wrapped up. How did the statues move in the real world? How did they get transported? Carmine's involvement seems kind of unnecessary narratively, and really he doesn't add anything to the premise. Having someone tell us something is up who's mentioned in passing as we investigate is not super important. The soundtrack and backgrounds are great, and the puzzles are a little too easy, but they're inoffensive for Chapter 1. We proceed to the first legal case with a cutscene. Our guard rushes into a room aboard a cargo ship and sees two women fighting as one clubs the other over the head with a pipe. It's not a particularly interesting hook, but okay, let's do the case. Full transparency, this is almost definitely the least fun I've ever had in an Ace Attorney case. The premise and cues are pretty flat, I like the witnesses okay, but it just feels very devoid of substance or kick. In 1-1, the murder is easily burned into your memory. The events of the crime are simple, but they stand out, so pointing out contradictions is fun and satisfying. I've played this case probably as many times as I have 1-1, I'm sure, but what happens here? What are the actual events? It's okay for this first case to be slow and a bit clunky, but the important thing here is that these cases normally aren't. The first case in an Ace Attorney game is almost always very strong because it has this inherent advantage of being a one-off. We don't investigate the crime scene for these cases, so they're free to be a little bit shorter, easier, more gripping, and perfectly paced to not overstay their import. I'm itching to make a longer video about all these cases, but suffice to say, this case is really flat, despite the fact that I do like Olivia Al Dente alright. It leaves a lot of mystery, even by its conclusion, but not anything that's referenced well or tied up satisfyingly. The arrangements are great. I love the 3D models and animation, but I think as an Ace Attorney case, this case in specific gets very little right, made worse by the fact that the case that follows it has two way better gimmicks that the first could have used. I'll present an idea for how to fix the cases later. The narrative takeaway here is that Espella jumped earlier off the bridge with Luke and Layton onto the ship, got involved in a different crime being committed that she wasn't privy to, and got accused of assault. We prove her innocence, even though Espella seems pretty weird and checked out mentally and is escorted by this suspicious woman. And after successfully getting her declared innocent of all charges, we're transported into the same book Luke and Layton found themselves in. Again, not to be annoying, but how did this happen? By the logic the explanation of the events of the game uses, the only way to use suggestion and manipulate people into thinking they're seeing magic is to have them drink water from Labyrinthia, which already I'm having a tough time with. I'm actually not really a stickler for plot holes, and maybe there's something here I'm missing, but this game is from the Phoenix Wright side about resolving inconsistencies and making sure all of the details of a story line up correctly. And from the Layton side, it's about deductions and making sure all puzzles are resolved. So not giving an explanation for the first inciting premise, namely how did we get here, is really tough to overlook. Onwards and upwards. This is the chapter the story starts properly in. I'll take this chapter to talk about the city and map design. It is not used as well as it is in other Layton games, or even other Phoenix games. It's a bit unfair to have the Ace Attorney investigation sequences share space with the Professor Layton exploration sequences, but they functionally do, and the former is pretty much completely removed because there isn't enough time to get lore and explore Labyrinthia as we also investigate a murder. So we don't investigate any murders. And really, unfortunately, we don't even really get time to explore Labyrinthia. This is kind of a feature of the 3D Layton games, I think, where you can see the entire map and places to explore on the map, but it's much worse in this game because you can jump from any 2 points on the map you can see instead of walking from adjacent places like in Azure and Legacy. Combined with the fact that you really only explore most places once per chapter before you're done with them, the main town, then the library, to which we've never really needed to return because this game's version of Granny Riddleton is standing outside the library. The poor section of town, the Knights area, Rogue's Tavern, the underground ruin, Shady Woods, Belduke's estate. We visit each of these places pretty much exactly once, and then we zip to the next area in the next chapter. I'm just not sure it makes a better game, but I do miss the Curious Village style of how intimate you got with the city by exploring it so thoroughly. It's really hard to find the NPCs likable and to encounter some of the better puzzles when there's design that's really begging you to just skip around to where you need to go. That being said, most all the NPCs are not really well designed by Layton standards anyways, or by Ace Attorney standards. How many stand out? How many do we meet more than once? We wander around right before a big parade the storyteller is putting on for the entire village, and we see the main prosecutor, Zacharias Barnum, alongside the High Inquisitor, Darklaw, who's very obviously that lady in glasses, accompanying the town's creator, the storyteller. As far as intrigue goes, this is okay. It isn't too muddy yet, but there is enough premises forming that it is getting there slowly. The paper that they throw out is the story, which predicts the future of the town. This next sequence in the bakery is where the crossover really shines fully. We enter a bakery and Phoenix Wright slams his hands down and yells,
Welcome!
"This is it. Baker Phoenix." Phoenix and Maya's memories are not all together and they're acting like they run this bakery, which is pretty cute. Putting aside how these two got here well before Layton and Luke, this is absolutely some of the best stuff in the game. The banter is really cute and charming. I think the voice acting is wonderful actually. As a fan of both of these games, it's these parts where the game fully commits to being a crossover and spends less time trying to imitate its source material at like 30% that I really love most. Espella's at the bakery with Aunt Patty, and there's a little kitten here, Eve. We settle into the end of the sequence, traveling to the library to meet Riddell Mystere, who's criminally underutilized, and we're woken up in the middle of the night by knights who say Espella is about to undergo a witch trial for suspicion of being the witch that burned 2 men alive. Holy shit. This is probably the best trial in the game. It's the freshest, it has a lot better puzzles. I really think this should have been the first case in the game. It's still small enough that we don't need to do any investigating, it introduces all the gimmicks, and even lets the player use hint coins for people who maybe haven't played an Ace Attorney game before. The opening cinematic this case, unlike the first one, is pretty killer and engaging.
We don't want no fuss and we don't want to hurt you, alright?
Yeah, we just want your money, that's all.
And you'll give it to us, won't you, without any fuss?
Ichnaze!
Two muggers approach Espella and she calls out a spell and lights them on fire. It's really, really gripping. Why wasn't this the first case? This case is pretty perfect aesthetically. The courtroom is well designed, the music is stupidly good. It's definitely in competition with any top other Ace Attorney soundtrack. The prosecutor Barnum is definitely great as an actor and in how great they're characterized. This is truly a fun case. I won't go clue by clue here either, but there are two important features we're trying for the first time. The Grand Grimoire, a book categorizing the types of magical spells in the world, and having to cross-examine multiple witnesses simultaneously. It's a really good idea mechanically to have rules that the spells adhere to, and finding the contradictions imposed by the Grand Grimoire is good consistently. For the multiple witness system, the main change to gameplay is that when you press one witness, other witnesses can disagree with what they're hearing and provide a different story. Pitting them against each other is good, if it's a little bit easy still. But I'll take a really clear, obvious audio cue over poring over the facial expressions of a witness any day. This system formed the basis for what the great Ace Attorney would use to really insanely high effect later in the series, and I think being able to have a buffer game where this mechanic finds its feet is pretty important. Beyond it having a mechanical change, there's the really important change the system imposes of allowing for the witnesses to not get boring. We can spend an hour with witnesses, and being able to get a wider cast for testimony gives more room for each character design to breathe, for more jokes, and for different types of testimony. It's good design. It lets design breathe, and it creates a lot of room for good writing. The witnesses here are okay. I think I like some of them better than others. My favorite by far is Amir, who's going to show up later, who's loud and pathetic and hated by everyone in this game. He's so pushy and annoying, and it makes me laugh every time people gang up to dunk on this dude. The case starts with these other four though, who we corner and turn the case around on when a loud dude, hilariously labeled some guy, screams from the gallery that he's got something to add.
Hold it! Wait a blooming second. This trial ain't even close to being over. Not before I take the stand to testify!
Order! Order! Who is this buffoon?
Behold! Who am I, you ask? Who am I? Why? I'm the man that's gonna single-handedly save this trial. I'm the fifth witness!
And he comes down to join them. It's so fucking funny to me. This guy's such a bozo clown. The key of this case comes about an hour later, after this guy bumbles through testimony and finally tells you that his name is Amir. There's an argument where Mary says, "Besides, I didn't even know this pathetic man's name," and Kira responds, "Neither did I. And even if I did, do you think he's the guy any self-respecting girl would want?" The trick here is that the spell to make something visible is Amir, spelled with an A. So this man thought he heard his name when Kira, the flower girl, made herself visible after casting the fire spell Ignace. We have a couple more truly good contradictions and puzzles when Kira breaks down and we catch her. She's sentenced to death by being burnt alive. She's put into a cage and lowered into the fire. It's pretty bleak and insane for these games, and it really ends this case on a big note. It frames every subsequent trial differently. It dampens the victory. It's pretty dark for these games, and it's done really well. With that, the case is over, and we return to the bakery. This next investigation sequence is a little bit slow, unaided by the puzzles, which at this point are not super engaging for the most part. I like the city at night a lot. I like getting weird pair-ups between the sidekicks and seeing more of the town. I want to be careful not to sound impossible to please, because I do think getting to retrace through the town and getting some nice interaction between the characters is good. I just think this could have been used a bit more and maybe better in the game. I think for a medieval storybook, the locations that we're looking at are a little bit plain, and the reason that we're out on the town looking is kind of dry. The music is great because it's Professor Layton music. Like, it's taken from Professor Layton games. To my knowledge, most of the songs we get in these sequences are from different Layton games, where the courtroom sequences get a ton of new, good, thematically potent music. We get some really capital L light setup towards the alchemist's house, the tower, and a little bit more substantive build-up as we meet the storyteller in his tall tower again. Again, it feels mimetically like old Layton, but does this premise have the same level of care and love that pretty much every other premise in the series has? Is meeting the storyteller now the same as meeting future Layton or something like that? I do think the storyteller's voice is great though.
I bid you welcome to Labyrinthia, the town governed by stories.
This investigation sequence, when I'm being prickly and watching really carefully, is not good. The puzzles are flat, the story isn't good. I don't like the mechanics of how we move, and I don't like a lot of the locations. That being said, I had and have a lot of fun every time I play this. The little cracks between all of that other stuff, the aesthetic, the excitement I had on my first time for this, for the budding mystery, the interaction between characters who normally don't talk together is really good. I want to keep mentioning this because it's important. Even if I'm being hard on this game, it's still the product of two of my favorite things ever. And I enjoy this sequence. And I'm only being hard on it because I love it, and I love the source material. That being said, I don't have nice words about this next sequence in this next court case. We move from here with Maya and Phoenix to the house of the now deceased town alchemist, who was the victim of this town's only unsolved case of murder. Okay, so this is where the witch trials get kind of whack for me. My proposal here is to cut the first case of the game on the ship and let the two robbers being burnt on the path be the first witch trial and trial of the game. It's already a good mystery, and not having an investigation sequence for that first one is okay, actually. The last case never looked great to me, but this next case really has the hum and shine of a case that could have been the best in the game and one of my favorites ever. In general, I love the third case of any Ace Attorney game. It's just free to be a little bit weirder than all the other cases, and it doesn't have to relate itself too closely to how the game begins or ends. See the case of the kids' TV show studio, the circus, and the gay restaurant where gay Red Tiger Phoenix Wright impersonates a lawyer in a court of law. These cases are the most bonkers and the most fun. So, a case setting up a dead alchemist killed by a witch whose house we're about to investigate is so rich with promise. The buildup is so good, and I wish it was written differently because this case is not super fulfilling. It's still good, and it's still Ace Attorney, but I really think this case couldn't succeed because of the way the crossover was built. We get to investigate, but we don't really learn much or get any substantive evidence. There really isn't allowed to be any good mystery here because we're crippled by having so few time, so few pieces of evidence, and so few twists. We meet at the door a young butler of the state, Jean Grey Earl, and get a bit of info about the alchemist Newton Belduke's death. Meanwhile, more plot happens with Luke and Layton in the storyteller's chambers. I think for this crossover, I do like this back and forth style of telling the story, but Layton and Luke jumping on horses feels a little bit dramatic and like it's trying to invoke another better Layton game. There's a single clue in the butler's study, the green painted wall, so we move to the scene of the alchemist's death, his study. Again, this is somewhat promising. There's things scattered everywhere. It's a little bit creepy looking. It's an alchemist's study, and in the official art book for the series, the illustrator says this: "Since it's a crime scene, there are a lot of elements. If you look closely, the motif of the magic circle in the center of the room is the first eye of the Great Witch." That is cool. I wish we did something with it. There's white powder on the floor, green behind the painting on the wall, and that's it. Those are the two clues we get in this case. It is really disappointing. Spoilers for other Ace Attorney games. In other better mysteries, victims will dress up in the accused costume to go commit a crime and then get killed by the person they're going to kill, or the culprit brings the person they're framing to a boat, fires a shot, and then jumps off while there's a witness to make it seem like they shot someone else who's already dead, or calls someone to location so they can drop something heavy on their head with a rope and pulley cloaked in the person they're framing's clothing since they're in a wheelchair and can't move. It's insane. I know for those trials we get multiple days of investigating and multiple trials, and there's more time that's just spent on developing and enriching the mystery, but holy shit, we're in this messy crime scene of an alchemist and we got two clues that in the mystery wind up being pretty superficial. The mystery is almost non-existent here, despite having the richest, coolest setting and premise of any Ace Attorney game in my opinion. A full Ace Attorney game with witch trials would bang. Prior to the trial, however, there's some commotion and Layton is turned into a gold statue, which, okay, this is cool, but maybe a little bit unnecessary. I don't want to nitpick, but we're doing mimetically what Ace Attorney loves to do, namely a principal mystery in which one of the main characters is a victim and the other is accused, and which intertwined with another mystery from a different case some years or months prior. So the trial goes, and despite not thinking the mystery here is great, I do think Jean Greyerl and Newton Belduke are all-timers, and the twist about Jean's gender is nice. There aren't many clues because there isn't a mystery, but I do still like this trial. One of the cute things about this trial is that Layton's the victim and Maya is the accused, so Luke is obviously pretty traumatized and testifies against Maya. It's cute, it's fun, I like them bonding, I like Luke being put in a really emotional place and seeing how they bounce around and grow a little bit. The witnesses are all just a little bit worse, and I think they are in the first case. Big exception to Amir, who's way funnier in this trial. One part that cracked me up is when discussion turned to the gold statue of Layton's missing arm, and Amir's new, very expensive getup is that a merchant runs down and shows everybody the statue Amir sold him, and
Amir! You lying, cheating, good-for-nothing! You tried to deceive me!
wow, this dude gets so rightfully dunked on so frequently. I love it. There's another part where Luke helps interpret testimony from a parrot, which would be charming if this game didn't already feel like it was copying off of the original trilogy's homework. It's tough. The line between fun callback and a sequence that can't think for itself is kind of based on its surroundings, and this case really needed some original ideas. We end with Jean Greyerl letting her hair down and telling her story. It's sad, it's somewhat touching, and her life with Newton Belduke is pretty good if a little bit scamp. Losing someone like that to suicide, the darker side of this town and experiment, the culture of burning witches are all brought up by this case and dropped. Belduke's motivation for ending their own life is not well explained now or later, and I really think you shouldn't have a character commit suicide if you aren't prepared to talk about hard things. And this case probably should have stuck to parrots and gold statues. The finale of this case is Phoenix turning around and pointing as Luke and Isabella turn the statue of Layton and have him point too.
Objection!
That's what I love about this game. The mystery, the reason that we're pointing isn't really all that remarkable, but the main cast being stupid and having fun together is pretty charming. With some shenanigans, Isabella volunteers herself to be burnt alive, but is saved by Maya, who takes her place and is dropped into the flames. This is the second character to look like they're dead in our main four, and credit where it's due, they do Wright Phoenix pretty well here when he almost beats the shit out of Barnum. We continue the investigation portion, effectively the last investigation. It's a doozy because we have a lot to wrap up. There's barely enough time to finish it all, and it definitely doesn't leave a lot of breathing room for the last case in the game. Maybe that's a too pointedly Ace Attorney reading of this, but this investigation feels like more of the same in this game. It's satisfying enough, and it resembles Layton third act wrapping up, but it's messy. We move with Luke, Phoenix, and Isabella to honestly my favorite location in the game, Rogue's Tavern. It's a little bar of pirate thief looking people with Rogue in charge. The best puzzle in the game, in my opinion, the Chalice Challenge, is here. It's great. This place is great. It deserved more time, especially because we just sort of sleep here and take off, never see it again. We investigate some, and some unimportant shenanigans go down. Figuring out that perhaps the fire execution isn't real, we sneak through the opening onto a cart and towards Shade Woods as we switch point of view to Layton and Maya, who are safe. I like this section actually. I think Layton and Maya have the best dynamic of all the new pairs we're making actually, and somehow Maya's wild energy bouncing off of Layton, who's going, yeah, true, okay. They explore the wooded area with these cloaked goons called Shades, and it's a good little memorable bit of scenery. It reminds me of the woods to the castle in Diabolical Box, and I think that's a bit quick and doesn't really leave the full impression since we're racing through here, but the intrigue is good. There's a big building and a throne for these shades to work further in the woods, and there's a fun little murder mystery actually where we burst into a locked room where there's seemingly just been a murder, and we have to take testimony to find out who was in the room and did it, and it turns out it was Barnum, which is wild. This feels like another chance for a better crossover. Like, we did a small murder mystery here. I wish we had a little bit of attorneying happening here, crossed with some puzzle solving. The next chapter takes us to the ruins beneath the town, and it's really nice hearing Layton say that archaic ruins are my speciality.
Archaic ruins are my speciality, after all.
But it does still feel like we're trying to hit every note in good Layton games. This time we're going for miracle masks, underground ruins of a civilization beneath the city, and we don't spend enough time in here to make it really memorable. I think the solution is to chop this and make the shade section more fleshed out, or vice versa, whatever. Nevertheless, it's charming and fun, and the sets here are really pretty and well made. It's kind of a shame because if it got more attention, if it was plot relevant, and it is functionally not plot relevant, these ruins are actually really pretty. The color schemes, the red trees, the water trickling sound effects, it's a really enchanting place that we blow by from and move on. Phoenix, Espella, and Luke catch up to us, and it's satisfying as you'd expect when everyone reunites and realizes that they're all okay. There is good weight to these relationships, and it's well demonstrated. We solve puzzles one at a time, which we're doing anyways, but which is framed as opening the 3 seals guarding some legendary inner room. It feels a little bit too much like we're doing the final puzzles towards the end of a Layton game, but the altar room is pretty breathtaking. We get a decent piece of the puzzle, finally. There's supposed to be a big bell here that when rung signals calamity. It seems pretty similar to the bell in the bell tower that Belduke saw and committed suicide shortly after seeing. Espella has some weird trauma-induced spell, and between chapters, Luke explains with a black screen and voiceover that Espella escaped them, it rained, and some other stuff happened. Okay, this is small, but putting on my little game theory glasses, I kind of have the strong impression that this was supposed to connect better, and I wonder if there was supposed to be more build-up and mystery for this last case. It seems really strange to me that to transition like this into the last case of the game, it's voiceover, it's really strong whiplash. At the top of this tower, someone who looks like Espella casts a fire spell and kills the storyteller. So yeah, not a terribly complex or engaging mystery yet, but that's okay. The punch loses a little bit of kick though, because this game just finished showing us that every character they've pretended to kill is alive. Darklaw is cool for a small moment when she says that she's going to prosecute this trial because she's the High Inquisitor and threatens Barnum, who we're grown to like. We get 3 minutes to investigate this crime scene here, so don't blink. My big gripe here is that this is the last case. We really should be getting the last chance to flex a crunchy, engaging mystery. It's sort of a shame that there's like seemingly as much evidence here as in the first trial of other Ace Attorney games, and that the mystery is worse than all of those first cases. We have some footprints, a cloak with flower on it, a pendant, and a puzzle that we get to solve later. It really is a shame, and I think it's pacing. If this game had less to gush out at the end, if there were less loose ends that fervently needed tying for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours at the end, we could have had a genuine mystery here using the Grand Grimoire and everything. And beyond this last case, beyond this investigation, beyond everything coming together in a satisfying way, we still have to climb a tower with Luke and Layton. I get it. I understand the compulsion. I like this idea in theory, to have Layton doing his last puzzle blitz, to get evidence that will be used with Phoenix's current evidence list, to talk to the man who's behind all of this, and who we thought was dead. It's just tough with the pacing. This is the kind of thing that would make a good murder mystery great, not something that's more important than having a good murder mystery. Yet, and still, I like playing this part in this last case. It's still fun, it's still satisfying, it's just not fun in the way that I'm used to having in the last Layton Tower or in the last murder trial of an Ace Attorney game. The tone here, though, is superb. It's probably the best in the game. You really feel this last trial.
Let's do this. Come on.
The courtroom is moved to a park with the moon hanging above and torches lighting the setting for this final legal battle. Darklaw is for a second genuinely terrifying and strong. The mystery is compelling, even though the mystery is and will turn further into the story of just the preceding events and the story of the town, instead of the mystery of this single murder. And so we proceed to the last case. Let's begin with positives. I quite like all the tonal things I just mentioned. I like the way the Phoenix and Layton bump heads and point and argue. This is the verses the game was built on in title. Actually, in the art book, it's mentioned that these two were designed as evil versions of themselves first in pre-planning, and they were meant to meet under bad circumstances and leave bad impressions on one another, so that they really would be engaged in a versus battle with each other. But this suffices here. Having them on opposite benches in the courtroom, albeit briefly, is okay. I like the witnesses in this case. I think having a group of knights in a unit that are distinct and similar is fun. I like Shaky, I like the simp ones, I like Foxy, I like this guy, but my one singular complaint about the witnesses is that they brought back Wordsmith and didn't stick the landing on the funniest joke in the game and bring back Amir as one of the guards. There's a few nitpicky objections, and we decided the key to this trial is in the puzzle that we weren't allowed to solve in the tower using the amulet. It doesn't work on our first attempt to solve the puzzle, and almost defeated, we realize Espella has the other pendant that will make this puzzle solvable. As the puzzle is solved, things begin to click. We climb the tower to find Kira hiding at the top level. And we transition to Luke and Layton. We have to solve a few puzzles in a row of the same format, and they're actually pretty fun puzzles, but they feel a bit hacky for the danger and stakes that they're trying to convey. We make it to the top floors of the tower where we find this honestly gorgeous garden. It's pretty, it's stunning, it feels nice to explore. I like the music. Further up, we enter Espella's room and further into the storyteller's room. Both of these are good. They feel like the natural progression of the storybook motif that we kind of had for a little bit at the beginning. I really like these few settings. They're good and they feel fitting of this world in a way that not many other settings have. So we find this picture of the two girls, which are obviously Espella and Darklaw, and we see that they have the same pendant, which is important, and we can't decide who this other mystery girl is with the dress and the two bun holders. And this is a puzzle we have to solve later. We make it to the storyteller, who summons suits of armor to life to fight Layton because, yeah, okay, we did need a Layton sword fighting section, I'll bite. And it is pretty animation in these cutscenes. It's perfect for both series, and I think this is the best case of that in the mandatory action scene. The animation is great. Luke and Layton return to the courtroom with the storyteller after a little bit of drama. Already, our mystery is sort of done. We're doing a Layton wrap-up from here on, actually. Not really a courtroom drama anymore. The murder in question didn't happen. We're here with the guy who was supposed to have been murdered. What follows is a few more hours of wrap-up. We argue a bit with Kira as finally the trial is coming to a lull. We call Darklaw to the stand. So the problem becomes, if we call Darklaw to the stand, who's going to be the prosecution here?
I believe I can fill that role.
Professor, wait, what are you saying?
I can prove, conclusively, that Espella Cantabella is, in fact, the Great Witch Bazella. Now, Mr. Wright, the time has come at last to settle this once and for all.
And that's sort of true. As always, he's kind of right. Phoenix is also kind of right. It makes this versus thing a little bit boring, especially because they don't really clash very much. It's tough. I understand the dilemma. There's no case for them to argue about, really. At this point, we just kind of have to let the marbles fall into place and to figure out the remainder of the truth. Since it was important for the player to see what was happening with Luke and Layton, for the stakes to feel appropriate, there's not really much tension as to what Layton showed up with or what he learned. We know too much at this point in the story, and we still don't really know anything. We get to present some evidence as both Layton and Phoenix, which is nice, and we get to interrogate Darklaw, who hasn't really had a chance to be menacing as a prosecutor or witness yet. Darklaw is revealed to be the head of all shades, the people in hoods. Their purpose is unknown, but they're given tasks to complete to uphold the appearance of magic. When a spell goes off, it's just a shade in an invisibility cloak doing some silly shenanigan. I know, give me a minute. Goldor was just replacing Layton with a statue of Layton. They're not really gracious enough to give us many explanations here about how other spells work, because wow, it doesn't hold super well for many of these. Okay, so the last objection is something I like from this game. Sometimes a piece of testimony will contradict another piece of testimony, as Layton points out. This is a genuinely good idea, and like all good ideas in this game, it gets expanded and refined in the Great Ace Attorney. Now, watch Layton and Phoenix turn and object to this.
Objection!
This is the ludic, the puzzle-solving climax of the game. Now, what do you think they're objecting to? What inconsistency do they point out? What difficult but rewarding puzzle were we given the chance to solve alongside the two best flagship puzzle series of all time? Darklaw says, she is known as the Great Witch and that she describes the shades lived outside Labyrinthia. While Kira says that Lady Darklaw was our venerable mistress. She assigned us tasks. She was the Great Witch. Did you spot the inconsistency between those two statements? It's grammar. Kira said that she was the Great Witch, which we have not been giving any clues to look for or been led to believe would be important. So what's happening here? It's like semantics? This is the last trial of the game and in the town of Labyrinthia, since if they catch the Great Witch here, the rules are that the witch trials are over. Kira's been caught lying and possibly committing murder. She's turned on Darklaw, who she's revealed already is the head shade. Darklaw is also possibly guilty and has no interest in protecting Kira. Both of these women are vulnerable to execution, and the state of affairs for both of them and the state of their relationship is pretty tenuous. So you're telling me that the pivotal objection in this game, with all that shit going on between those two, is that Kira said she was the Great Witch? Is that piece of deduction worthy of all this pomp? The storyteller takes a stand, and insultingly, this part of the story is called the epilogue. We've not even begun to reveal the central premise here, and we still have quite a ways to go. I'll speed through what the storyteller says for literally another hour or two, but one of the last objections of the game is that we have to figure out who on earth the girl in the picture is. Isabella can't remember, and deciding who this girl is pivotal. Obviously, it's Darklaw, and it feels really insulting that this is saved for so late in the last case, when really at this point we should be flexing our brain and trying as hard as we can to figure out this last detail. There's no like turning the case upside down moment here, it's just, who's this girl? So the story is as follows. Arthur Cantabella, the storyteller, and his friend Newton Belduke founded a town a long time ago after discovering this large silver bell in ruins. The bell had some warning that if everybody heard the bell, they'd be put to sleep because of some mineral in the water supply. This mineral also made the town subject to hypnotic suggestion, which Arthur wanted to study. During a festival with lots of fire, the town had two daughters, Isabella, daughter of Arthur, and Darklaw, daughter of Belduke, went to play and rang the bell, putting everyone to sleep and catching the town on fire, killing everyone in it. Fuck. Both girls were traumatized, and Isabella visualized this accident as her being a witch who cast a fire dragon on the town, when it was actually Darklaw who rang the bell. The storyteller told Isabella a story about a witch who actually did it, and to protect her, continued telling stories about evil witches who would one day be killed in witch trials to save the town. It was all one big performance for her sake. He rebuilt the town as a new CEO of a pharmaceutical company and filled it with willing participants who wanted to restart their lives and participate in the study on hypnotic suggestion. The village was rebuilt, and the villagers drank water which made them suggestible to hypnosis. They were given fake memories and witnessed witchcraft, which really was just the shades wearing invisibility cloaks. Invisible because the villagers were given the hypnotic suggestion that they couldn't see pure black, so the witch trials and town of Labyrinthia were formed to propagate it. The storyteller planned for another witch to take the fall as the real Great Witch, but Darklaw, looking for revenge for her late father, who killed himself because of guilt and trauma related to everybody dying, framed Isabella as the Great Witch and let her be executed. When it's pointed out that the two girls, along with their fathers, were the sole survivors of this great fire and that Darklaw actually rang the bell unknowingly, everyone sort of has a breakdown and everyone apologizes for their roles in this. Layton was brought here on purpose to investigate, and Phoenix was brought here on accident, which is hilarious. This is insane. This is the most insane ending to any Layton game, which are characterized by being fucking insane, and definitely the most insane ending to any Ace Attorney game. It really does stun me that this is the ending. I like this game enough, but in full transparency, I just can't conjure any words to make this make sense. It's insane. I could pick about 20 contradictions in the plot and ending of this game because anybody could pick about 20 contradictions in the plot and ending of this game. How did they get here, actually, if they hadn't had any water and they weren't able to be hypnotized? How did the statues move? Etc. I could pick apart the writing with Newton and Darklaw and be fussy about things not paying off or getting appropriate care, but there's no need. The ending is insane, and I think everybody who's ever played it thinks the ending is insane. The game closes with the sun rising and all of the machinery of pure black in the town that was used to propagate the witchcraft was finally visible. I don't know how everybody can see it. I guess no one drank water for a while. I like this game. I like a lot about it. It does not end on the strongest note. And it fittingly doesn't really end as a courtroom drama or in the typical Layton pointing at someone and everything coming together kind of heartwarming way. I like everyone on the boat. I love Darklaw and Barnum's post-game outfits. This ending feels good, even if it doesn't punch very hard. It's neat, it's tidy, it's nice, it thinks it's over. I like it. I love this game. I love it even as it keeps growing past its own carrying capacity. It doesn't really quite figure out how to synthesize these two really different forms. I love this game even when it stumbles, even when it hits its head, even when it makes mistakes that are really, really hard to look at. The onus of this game is kind of this principle. Having these two games bump heads and compete for time makes both of them a little bit worse, actually, and it really draws into sharp focus what precisely these games are about, because the tone, aesthetic, acting, animation, setting, premise, all of those things are A+, but missing out on what turns out to be the core of these two games, the mysteries and the puzzles, the writing, the good writing and sharp mysteries, it feels a little bit hollow. Even still, it's a wonderful story, and it's so fun to explore a world built for these two. It feels a little bit silly and optimistic to ask for, but I really, really do think a sequel where both of these two games blend a bit better is really achievable. I think it starts with better puzzles. I think it's possible to have a story where the principal puzzle-solving moments come with the Ace Attorney investigations, and we get longer, proper, fleshed-out investigations in service of proper, good murders. Ace Attorney's actually done this before. There's the footprint minigames, there's the fingerprints, there's putting a jar back together, etc. Ace Attorney was already looking for DS puzzle functionality before this crossover, so why not let these two properties work for one another, not against each other? Okay, now this is the part I'm most excited about. I'm gonna get to talk with a really wonderful YouTube channel about the same size as this one who makes a lot of really good Professor Layton videos. This is totally the coolest part of having a channel, sharing this love of these games with you all and with other creators. Okay, here it is.
All right, this is the Q&A part with things no one cares about. I'm super excited. So we've been trying to do this for like half a year, and I'm really, really pumped that it's happening now. So we're about the same size channel, and she is mostly known for doing Layton stuff, and I'm mostly known for doing Ace Attorney stuff. So we thought this would be a really nice crossover for the Ace Attorney Layton game, and we're gonna do a little Q&A stuff. And then, do you want to introduce yourself really quickly?
Yeah, so my channel is called Things No One Cares About, because it just started out as me making things that I didn't think anybody cared about, and then lo and behold, people cared about it. So I just kind of kept the name. But yeah, most of my videos are like Layton based, but I do have like videos on other stuff, more like video essay type content, and they're fairly long. So
they're also really good. So everybody go subscribe after this one and watch. She's got nice Nancy Drew videos that I like, and some nice Five Nights at Freddy's one.
Yeah.
And I'm I'm a big fan of Layton as well. And she has the new video she just put out on like the Lost Layton game. I love so much. So that's a really, really nice video. Everybody should go watch that right now. All right, let's do it. Okay, starting off. So I think, and I mentioned in your video that I think the premise of like witch trials fits the Ace Attorney setting really well. And, the idea of having a magical rule book and a new set of rules about how crimes are committed is really good. But do you think that that sort of same setting of a medieval storybook fits the Layton series well?
Yeah, I think it like fits really weirdly well because they've mentioned witches before. Like there's Ariana is like thought to be a witch in Last Spectre. I feel like there's another witch I'm forgetting, or another person who is thought to be a witch. I don't know, it's not coming to me. I don't know, maybe
Yeah, I can't think of it either.
That's kind of like normal, like people being like persecuted or like thought to be weird, like Anton, everyone being like, oh, he's a vampire.
Yeah.
So like I feel like that fits really well. And I also think the like medieval storybook setting fits well because again, it's kind of like a little bit like Unwound Future, just in terms of like being sucked into like a different reality. Because I mean, they don't really make it like clear if they think that they're in like a past time. They're just like in a book. So I guess that's pretty like anachronistic. I don't know. Like, so I feel like that it fits really well in terms of the premise.
Do you think they like, because I think Unwound Future we've mentioned like does a better job like fleshing that out and explaining it.
Yeah.
So where do you think they could have like maybe conveyed it better, or like from premise to execution, like what?
Yeah, I think the initial setup honestly needed to be a little stronger.
Yeah.
Or I think that to me there's like a slight disconnect between it feeling like you're in a storybook.
Yeah, true.
I don't know necessarily like what would have made it feel more like a storybook. I think just like the whimsy, like it needed to be more a little bit like whimsical.
Totally, yeah.
Or also to me, it doesn't really make sense like how, I don't know, it's like weird that they're sucked into a book, but then the storyteller is also in the book.
Right.
Like, I don't know, that's kind of like nitpicky, but I also
No, I
feel
get
like the storybook essence like doesn't get picked up later. Like in the reveal of the ending, like was that the same way that the participants were like gathered? Like, did they think they got sucked into a book? Like, was that like their entry point? I don't know. That part is just like a little bit weird. Like, I just don't think that they like fully thought it through. They just like had the concept and then like hit the ground running and then like didn't really circle back once they had like the rest of the story written out.
Yeah, but I do like the premise. It like it feels like on paper, same way that Ace, it like feels like it fits. It's close. It's like I like the idea, but maybe just like I don't know.
Yeah, I also think one important part of that makes it feel like a Layton premise is the fact that it starts with a letter. Like every Layton game starts with a letter, and so in this you get a letter from Carmine.
Yeah, that's was my thought is like when you were asking me earlier, like, why is Carmine in here? It feels like so we can have a dude at the beginning be like, my dear professor.
Yeah. I think he was there to like write the letter in that.
Yeah.
I think maybe it would have made sense if like maybe Espella had written the letter, like somehow she like got out of the storybook, wrote like, I don't know, Googled or the equivalent. And then, like you found him, and then when she got like sucked back into the storybook, like she no longer remembered any of that because like she doesn't remember Carmine like at all.
Yeah, no,
like nobody really does except for Newton. I feel like was the only person who like actually interacted with him besides the storyteller.
I don't fully even remember that.
That's like I don't really remember him like being relevant at any other point. So
yeah, it does feel like there's a lot of balls in the air with the premise, right? Like there's just too much that they're trying to, and then like maybe not that much gets actually like totally fleshed out. Yeah,
one thing that I think is like funny that they kind of didn't address, and I think it's totally fine that they didn't address it, but it caused me like a lot of trouble when I was trying to put together like a Professor Layton like timeline of his life, is that like Ace Attorney is like set in like 2020, like we like have like a date for that, and like Layton doesn't have a date, but it's like pretty solidly like in like the 1900s. Like it said that his birthday was like he was born like December 31st, 1900.
Oh, what?
And like that kind of fits. Yeah, like they didn't want to, apparently with Layton, they didn't want to put like a specific date because they didn't want to be like limited to specific technology, or they didn't want like the audience to like expect certain technology in there. But it like mostly fits with like steampunk aesthetic and like kind of like early like 1900s.
I did not know that at all.
So it's kind of just funny because like they don't like they're very like different times. Yeah, which is fun because I think that maybe played into part of why they needed them to be like sucked into a storybook, because
Yeah.
for one group or the other, it was going to be weird.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So for the puzzles, any like really standout good or bad ones, or just any ones that kind of like got stuck in your craw? And then do you think that the 3D style was used well, or do you prefer like kind of the Curious Village Diabolical Box, like word puzzle format?
I think that they like went overboard in terms of like fully relying on the 3D. And one of my kind of like gripes with this game is the puzzles, because there's only like 70 puzzles, which I mean, I get that like it makes sense that there's less than a normal Layton game, but that's like so few
it's not
to
a lot.
me. And they like repeated a lot of the same formats. Like there are a lot of like series of like puzzles, which like there are series in like every Layton game, but these were like not, they didn't really escalate. Like you remember in Curious Village, there's the one of the chess ones where you have to put as many queens as possible, and like every iteration. I love that one. Like I think in Diabolical Box, I think it's the
Knight's Tour.
There's Knight's Tour, and then there's also like I think it's like Chinese checkers. I don't know if that's the actual name, but it's like the marbles where you have to have like the one solid marble. Yeah. And so there are different iterations of that like get like way the fuck harder.
Yeah.
But like in this game, like there's the series of like the cloud maze.
Yeah,
and
the
mazes are more annoying. Like they don't really get.
Yeah.
Like, I don't feel like they elevate like your thinking or anything. It just gets like more like cumbersome.
Yeah. It feels kind of mean to pick on the puzzles, but it is like, I don't know. I feel like you really can't like Knight's Tour. You can't. It's really hard to brute force that. But like the cloud maze is like it's not really like. I mean, you could, if you're like, galaxy braining it, you could like get it the first try. But like if you fuck up, it's just like, okay, I'll like go back. Like it's not really. It feels more like a little like game than like a puzzle.
Yeah. And it also feels like there is a similar puzzle in one of the previous games that's a flip maze. But that one is just like one side and it's back and forth. So there is like, you could just like brute force it and kind of just like, click randomly until you get it. Or you could like actually be strategic and like try
and, like,
to
at least figure it out.
Figure it out. Like the cloud maze, it's 100 level. You're not figuring that out. Like,
it just feels like, and like it never was that hard anyways. It felt mostly like there's a couple split paths, but mostly it's like you follow the clouds, and then it it just was like
I did like one thing that I really like about the 3D puzzles is or like the puzzles with the 3D like console is I feel like they added a whole new like way of problem solving. Like I don't mind a lot of the physical puzzles, and I think it's really cool that whereas in like maybe like 1, 2, and 3 like Curious Village, Diabolical Box, on Future, it was almost always something just static at the top screen. But I like that now you had things that like were more physical changes. Like in my video we talked about the match puzzle in like Curious Village where it's like the dog getting run over, you have to move 2 matches. And so like I like the puzzles where you're actually moving things. And so I feel like the 3D like opened them up to something where you're doing something on the bottom screen and it shows you what it changes in the top. So I like that. I just feel like they kind of went like too overboard with it.
I did write down, I was trying to figure out which, I remember a couple puzzles I liked, and like to be fair, I did forget about these, but like in terms of like puzzles that were like series like there have been in previous games, I did like the chalice sliding ones. Like those were pretty fun.
Yeah, same. Those were really fun.
That was like about it for like those kind of puzzles. And then I liked one of the puzzles was like the twist was that the knight was a girl, and like if you don't, it was like kind of a wordy puzzle as opposed to like moving a guy around. There's a couple puzzles that I did like, but it felt overwhelmingly like move a thing or touch a 3D thing and rotate it or whatever. I don't know.
There was a whole other series, or not, it wasn't like one set series, but there were a couple puzzles where you had to like sneak past things on a set path. That I don't remember there being puzzles like that in previous games. So I thought that was like
Yeah, I mean, it's
appreciated
clever.
it's
Yeah.
new.
I
Yeah.
thought the one that of those that I liked best were where you had to control two people, and it's like you go
Yeah.
back and forth. Like that was at least like, okay, it's kind of, you have to be a little bit
You
clever
have to-
about it.
yeah.
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 Yeah. So this is something that I didn't really think about until I finished the game. But in retrospect, Layton does get that cool moment at the end where, you know, the theme plays and he gets the back-to-back with Phoenix and they both point, and that's like, it's fun. And you know, if you like either of them, it's fun.
Yeah.
But do you think that maybe was there room in the game for Layton walking and like doing this thing and walking around a room and then pointing at somebody, or like, do you think it wouldn't have fit?
I think it totally would have fit. Like, I feel like he could have done that with the Dark Law reveal.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Like that would have been kind of perfect.
Mhm.
Or even he could have done it earlier when you figure out. I think this would make sense when you figure out the storyteller is Estella's dad or vice versa.
Yeah.
So there's something
Not a lot of
like
people in the room though.
Yeah,
It would just
that's-
be like, you would just walk. I mean, it's just him and Luke and the storyteller. There's not a lot of like
I feel like
suspects
he
in
would
there, to be
still
fair.
do it.
Yeah,
that's true. But I do think that it would have been nice at the end because he could have
Yeah.
like that could have been a perfect way to just like remind everybody what the fuck is going on.
Yeah, totally.
Or like why it matters. I think that would have been like a perfect wrap up. And I'm also like, I don't know, I'm kind of surprised that they didn't do that.
Right.
Because I think that also would have been a nice time to have, they could have like panned to the crowd and you could have seen like the baker there, like all like the tavern
Totally.
there. You could have had like everybody who you've been talking
Totally.
to
Yeah.
there, and that would have like tied it all together. I think that would have that would have made it a lot better.
I think I'm realizing that like the hard part about these two games like clashing against each other, which is I think mostly they have good synergy and good chemistry,
Yeah.
but like the only a few times that they kind of rub in the wrong way is there's not normally when there's a big reveal in Layton, it's like he's telling you.
Yeah.
Like it's like, oh wow, and like Layton is letting you know something, but like that really doesn't happen in Ace Attorney at all.
No.
Like normally it's like, okay, well, what is it? And then you have a list of things to pick through and you have to,
Yeah.
it's like your agency to decide what the twist is. So I think I get why there couldn't have been a latent pointing because you had to solve the
Yeah.
puzzle, but it's still kind of a bummer.
I think that they could have done a mix of like how in the previous games when Layton is like testing Luke, like
Mhm.
sometimes those come before.
Yeah.
And so I feel like maybe it could have been a cutscene, like right, like if you click the final like big contradiction or whatever that
Mhm.
pulls the whole thing apart, then you know Layton could have been like, I see you solved it, like Phoenix.
Yeah.
And then he's
And then a
like, let me
cutscene.
explain.
True,
Yeah,
true.
like I
Yeah,
think
you're
that
right.
that would have
That's very true.
worked. But I think you bring up a good point in that like both of these games have completely different ways of like revealing information.
Hmm.
And I think that there should have been a little bit more balance because like in some ways it's 50-50. Like I feel like you figure out 50% of the plot with Layton and 50% with like Phoenix.
Hmm.
But I feel like it's like even though it's like 50% of like the facts of the situation are split between the two of them, your time in terms of learning everything is like all with with Phoenix. I mean,
That's right. Yeah, totally. And again, something that's just kind of like awkward and tough about that is like, especially in that last trial, it's like how much, like what were the puzzles of that trial is like, who's the girl? And it's like, okay, fuck you. It's, you know,
yeah, we know
you know
who
what I
it
mean?
is.
Like the times that they like give you the mic and they're like, what do you think? It's like stupid. Like it's like,
Yeah,
could the
it's like a
silhouette have
Dora
been in
the
the
Explorer
footprint?
question,
It's like,
yeah.
okay, it's just like really silly. And they kind of solve it for you. And then they're like, well, what could it, and then they tell you so much and they sit down and like the characters talk and, you know, the storyteller is so bummed and everybody's kind of like, you know, giving these long poems and stuff, but they don't give you a lot of chance to put the pieces together, which is a shame.
Yeah, I think one thing that maybe would have been like a solution to that is like one thing I really liked from Curious Village and Diabolical Box that I feel like they sort of let fall off is like both of those games have like pictures that you have to put together. And I mean, it's such a minor thing, but I think maybe we could have found like, I don't know, a sheet, like maybe the letter,
storybook.
or like the suicide note from Newton or something
like
like
the invisible
that.
ink. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that we had to like maybe we had to like slowly gather pieces like with Layton and then
Yeah.
put them together, and maybe it turned into
Yeah.
like sometimes then it's like a picture and then it turns into like a sliding puzzle or something. Because I
Mhm.
feel like a lot of times with Layton, like you have puzzles that are like only tangentially related
Mm.
to the actual like evidence or fact that's being revealed.
Yeah.
But like that's fine because it's still like I'd rather have like a puzzle that's actually like fun and like difficult and
Totally.
rewarding to solve
Yep.
than, you know, have it be like a one-to-one representation of like the
Totally.
fact that you're learning. And so I think they could have like done something with that, because I feel like they tried to go one-to-one, and so then it turned into these like kind of stupid things where
Yeah.
it's dumb to solve it in a puzzle format.
Totally. But I think also Layton, even though it like you're saying, you don't get a lot of agency in terms
Mhm.
of like solving the whole thing, it is really satisfying for Layton to do it and be kind of like a Sherlock type dude. And they also do a really good job breadcrumbing you along and
Mhm.
letting you know that Layton's like got something cooking, and like giving you a lot of different pieces of this thing where you could
Yeah.
never feasibly put it together yourself. Like
Yeah.
there's no way you could figure out that Folson's has a gas
Yeah.
like that. But like
Yeah.
when they tell you, it's like, oh, that's why this and
Yeah,
this and
that's
this.
why those things make sense.
Like there's absolutely nobody played this game and we're like, that's why.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just, it's tough. All right, next one is rank this against other Layton games with the ending in terms of its coherency, complexity, and how satisfying it is to finish.
Okay. I think that it is the most complex. I can't think of.
Agreed.
I was doing my
Yeah.
Layton timeline. I literally just didn't explain the plot of this game because I was like,
Yeah.
no.
Yes, it is a lot.
And also, you know, like for that video, I was trying to like learn more about like Layton's life and chart that out. And you don't really learn anything. And there's
Mhm.
also like, because that timeline issue I was talking about, where like
Right.
they're, like different time areas.
Mhm.
Like a lot of people think that like say that this game isn't canon, which I don't know. I didn't really care to like argue with that, so I just didn't go into anything. I was like, sure, why not?
Yeah.
So it's definitely the most complex. I think it's mostly coherent, except for the fact that the magic system kind of falls apart when you look at the premise, because like how did the statues come to life and like all that, like it doesn't make sense. And maybe there's like an explanation.
It also feels like they explained the easy ones, kind of like they're, you know what I mean? Like they're like, and the rest of them were done similarly. It's like, okay, you know what I mean?
Like, that was rough. Yeah.
Like they're like Ignace, like there's some little flamethrowers or whatever. And you're like, okay. And then they're like, you know, Godor, trust me, we had a statue and we just moved it over.
That's
like, okay.
Also just the fact, like the idea that there's just like little dudes, like,
little dudes
running around
that like KO you
ready
too,
to do whatever,
like will fully knock you out and then like cause mischief, and like what the fuck,
like what, like that's that's like legit insane. Like,
it's wild.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like the next least coherent game would be Diabolical Box.
Yeah,
because that's just like, what are you talking about? Like,
to be fair though, I feel like there's like one in Diabolical Box, there's like one leap that's like, really? I don't know about that. And then in this one, there's like, it's like, okay, trust us.
Yeah.
If you drink the water, if you hear the sound of silver, you get fucked up and you can't see pure black or whatever.
And and there's dudes running around and because I just feel like with Diabolical Box, like the main thing is just like, if like for me, like how many people in the village are in False and are still there, because otherwise how are you learning this information? And I don't know, maybe I'll do another video like going through each character, because I actually think the only real character there is Katya, Anton, obviously the butler, and then like that weird FBI agent.
Interesting.
Because you actually, like, I was thinking about this like when I was replaying it, you actually don't learn that much new information. Oh, maybe the museum guy actually, but for other than those people, you don't really learn any new information except for like, things. But otherwise, whatever, it's irrelevant. But that's like really just one thing. Whereas this is like, what the fuck?
There are so many things that like they have to really work hard to.
Also, one thing that gets me is like looking at this as like a science experiment. like, I mean, like, do you like
Yes.
ever, do you have to get like IRB approval for like stuff that you do in grad school?
No, not really.
Okay, because like
But yeah, no, it is
none of
wild.
it's like, yeah, like
Yeah.
IRB is like that like international like review board for like
Yeah.
ethical research. Yeah, and like you like this could
There's
not
no
have
fucking
happened. There's
way.
no,
No.
or there would at least be. I think maybe what would have made sense if like maybe Carmine was like in like also a researcher who like got
Yeah.
cold feet and was like, because like what
Yeah.
also, what is this for? Like they never explained
Right.
what this research for. Like again with Unknown Future, the time travel is like I mean, you know, a lot of people research time travel anyway, so you don't have
Yeah.
to defend that too much. But like they do kind of explain like why they were researching all
Yeah,
that stuff.
totally. And there's scientists floating around, and you
Yeah.
hear a lot about scientists,
It
and
makes so much sense.
like the leap is like, I don't believe you, but okay, I see you've like set it up in the fiction at least. I see. Okay.
I think that maybe the like witches instead of them being like this weird cycle of like you get burned as a witch and then you become a like little mischief maker,
Yeah.
those should have just been scientists. Like those should have
Yeah.
been people part of the experiment.
That's true. That makes more sense. Yeah.
And then they should have, because I like don't understand like if they were trying to test the like water, like the hallucinogen.
Yeah, I think that was what it was. Like the suggestibility. It's like, okay.
Then I don't know. I feel like it should have also been like maybe some sort of like behavioral thing, because otherwise like there are so many easier things and cheaper like studies you could do besides like creating machines to
Yeah, I
do
know.
witchcraft.
I know. It is
It's
wild.
It's a lot.
Yeah, and I don't know. It seems like they're copying off of like some other like similar type feeling Layton endings where it's like, you know, I the big science project, the town that is full of people that blah blah blah. I don't know. It just it's tough.
It almost does feel like the perfect Layton game because of that, because it's like it's so similar to other like things we've seen. Like every Layton game also has like a fake town. Like there's always a town that is not what it seems.
Exactly.
And so like I like that aspect. In terms of like how satisfying this game was to like finish, I mean, I was just happy because it kept like making me think I was done, and then there would be like something else, and I just felt like that last trial like really turned on. But I don't think it was very satisfying in terms of like figuring it out, because while I was curious to like know how the magic system worked, to me like the real thing that like I was really like what's going on is like with Espella, and I don't feel like there's the reveal packs enough of a punch, because a lot of things are obvious or then overly confusing.
Totally.
Like I'm just like confused about like the whole relationship between like her and like Darklaw and all. Like I'm just like, wait, what? Like what? And then I still don't really understand why the storyteller was like, well, I'm just gonna like ruin my daughter's life. Like I don't know. It's just like bizarre.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking too, is even in other Layton games where like the ending is a little bit confusing or unbelievable. Like there's there's a Layton game where there's like a prehistoric monster. Like there's a lot of ones that are like, okay, whatever. But there is always a pretty strong emotional core, and like it always is touching at the end, or like makes me feel something. And I did not really, I think the emotional core is supposed to be like Espella and her dad, or Espella and Darklaw. It's like I don't really like either of these relationships.
I feel like I agree. Like I feel like it's missing the human element. Like I think, again, even though like other Layton games are like extremely outlandish, I think the one thing that always seems very realistic is like how the people act. Like I don't know, this is like kind of corny, but like I feel like usually Layton games show like the best sides of people, or like the most like human and like compassionate, and like that leads people to do bad things. Like Clive obviously, but like he's acting out of like a deeply vulnerable like human emotion, and I just didn't, I feel like I didn't really care all that much about these characters, because I like didn't feel the person who I thought had like the most humanity was the main like inspector guy, who like Darklaw's like the main inquisitor dude from
I like him. Barnum.
Barnum, yes.
He gets pretty tossed aside, but like I really liked him as a prosecutor.
I'm also was confused about like the dog.
Yeah.
Like, was that
Yeah.
Johnny like supposed to be? I was like,
I
is
have
this a
no
person?
idea.
I
I
do
just
not.
was, yeah.
I totally
Yeah.
forgot about that until I was
Yeah.
thinking about him. Like he has like character development,
Yeah, he does. He's
but we
great.
don't really know like what his deal
Yeah.
is or like.
Well, that's yeah, it's such a shame because like the main prosecutor, we should get maybe some more like attention, screen time.
Yeah.
We should know what she's about and like blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But like she just kind of was like, I'm gonna be a little bit bad
Yeah.
to be bad, and I'm gonna mess
Yeah.
with this. Like I don't really get. Maybe it was like the performance, maybe the writing wasn't great, but like I don't know. I feel like the other antagonists are so well written, and
Yeah.
like I just love like Anton, his performance is so good, and Clive performance is so good.
Yeah.
Descalay is so great all the time. It's everybody. It's like, oh man, I
Yeah.
really like feel this antagonist, but like
Yeah.
Dark Law is just kind of like there, and
And
I don't
feel
know.
like, again, I don't know too much about like the backstories of everybody in Ace Attorney, but like I feel like the same thing is true for Edgeworth, and then
Totally.
is Godot the other? He's like
Yep,
another.
totally.
Yeah, like those.
Oh my
they
God,
have
yeah.
such.
Yeah,
They're like
Man.
even more like developed
Yeah.
and like human than the Layton
Totally.
antagonist, except for maybe like Descalay. I would put them on the same. Like Descalay is
Fair.
like, really, really developed. Obviously,
totally. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how much Ace Attorney develops the antagonists of each case.
It's
like
pretty
they feel like-
thorough.
yeah.
I think so. I mean, I think they do a really good job explaining. Normally, if it's like somebody who is evil, you get a really
Yeah.
good sense of like what
That's-
flavor evil they
yeah.
are, or if they're like somebody who is, caught in a bad spot and doing it,
Mhm.
and it's like tragic. You really feel that too.
Yeah.
But like, I really
Yeah.
don't feel anything for Dark Law.
No, I'm just like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like I'm just confused.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a shame. She's like really hardly a prosecutor. Like it's like she's there for a second and then Layton
Yeah.
pops up. So it's like it's really tough to feel her as an antagonist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas like mechanically feeling like prosecutors like jump on you, and
Yeah.
like you can feel a good like as the game ramp. I know it's like text-based and linear, but like it
Yeah.
feels like when there's a really good prosecutor, it's like they're objecting to you at specific points and like kind of fucking with you is like
Yeah.
feels really bad. And like Dark
Yeah.
Law doesn't ever get in your face or anything. Like she's just
No.
kind of
And they didn't even really develop her as like the witch. I feel like
Totally.
her like it didn't. Even though we talked about like it's obvious that it's her kind of
yeah.
like you don't get the same sense that it's the same personality. Like I don't know. It's
Mhm.
just it just felt a little flat.
Yeah. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, go subscribe to Things No One Cares About and watch. She's got really, really nice Layton videos, and give a lot of love to the other videos as well because they're all really nice. And thank you for watching this one. And then go check out, she's posting, I should have mentioned that at the beginning. She's posting a video that is like tangent to this one about, so hers is focused on the Layton side, and then there's a similar little Q&A, same format as we just did this one. So go subscribe.
All right, that's it. Thank you all so much for watching. I really love this game. I love all the places it makes mistakes and tries new things that were a little bit ahead of their time. I love this series. I love both of these series, and I love making things. This video's been a really long time in the making, and it's really special to me. It was made way more special because I got to make something with someone else who loves Layton and Ace Attorney and these games and making things. It's really pretty. And if you liked this and liked Things No One Cares About, go watch her videos, go subscribe to her, comment on her videos, show love. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you for showing love and support and for liking these games. I love you.